Today, we're going to be talking about my top 10 favorite NFL wide receivers. So coming in at number 10, we have Brandon Aiyuk. So I think he doesn't get enough credit for how good of a route runner he is. This is a perfect example of him being able to stop on a dime. So for all the wide receivers that are on my list, we're going to be listing out different attributes and breaking down some different routes that they run to give you guys some value out of that as well. So obviously, leading into every single break where you have to drop your hips, the number one key, the one thing I want you guys to take away is you have to be violent with your hip drop. Going into every break where you have to drop your hips, or really any route in general, we were trying to make this DB believe that we were running a fade. Everything is a fade until it is not. And at the last possible second, you have to drop your hips on a dime. So you want to try to shoot your hips into your feet as violently as we can. So when you can shoot your hips into your feet violently and you could bring your chin down to your knee and hold that 90-degree position with your legs, you're going to be able to decelerate on a dime. And that's how we get separation from this DB. And I think Aiyuk shows this every single week, time and time again. And that's something that you guys can definitely take away from his route running. So number 10 on my list is Brandon Aiyuk because of his ability to change direction, decelerate at the top of the route. Number 9, coming in at number 9 is going to be DK Metcalf. And I think Metcalf gets a lot of credit for being obviously very fast, very big, having great moves at the top of the route. But I think off the line of scrimmage, he does not get enough credit for the releases that he uses to create separation. That's what we're going to break down next. However, if you guys are a quarterback or a wide receiver, fellas, and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 15 different locations across the country this year for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below if you are interested. And we are coming to one of the cities listed on the screen right now. We're going to be coming out to San Francisco, Orlando, Phoenix, Charlotte, Austin, Las Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles. So guys, you want some more information, check out again that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you there. Let's get back to this video. So Metcalf is going to be using something called a crossover release. So a crossover release is a great way to get separation anytime that you want to take an outside release. You could also do this on an inside release, but essentially what a crossover release is where you step in the direction you want to go first. Some people refer to this as a double up. Some people refer to this as a 1-2, but he steps with his outside foot first, and this step has to be quick and it has to be sudden. We're not trying to step super far. We're trying to just get that foot into the grass so we could push off of it to sell the inside cut, because the second step of this crossover is the more important step. We're trying to make this DB think we're trying to cross his face, run a drag, run a slant to get him to hesitate, and then we can separate back to the outside. Major key on any type of release, you guys, is you have to make sure that you are selling the release with your hips. You see how Metcalf, when he does this move, you see how it's not just his head and his shoulders leaning in this direction. It's almost like he's turning his belly button in this direction. That's what gets a DB to jump, because in press, what is he keyed in on? He's keyed in on my hips, and that's what we have to sell it with. So Metcalf does this all the time. I just don't think he gets enough credit for it, and that's why he's coming in at number 9 on my top 10 wide receiver list. Now, coming in number 8, we got Malik Neighbors. I know he is a rookie, but I think he is the best rookie wide receiver and one of the top receivers in the NFL this year. And this is a great example of how you can get separation on a double move. Remember, guys, just like we talked about with DK Metcalf, when it comes down to separation, when a DB is either in press man, catch man, or off man, his eyes are going to be on my hips. So he's running this hitch and go, but I want you to pay attention to how much he turned his hips, his shoulders, and his eyes to the inside. That's what's going to get a DB to crash down or at least hesitate, and then we can separate back over the top. So you guys can take all that away from you. All your games, I'm sure everybody has some type of double move route. Make sure that you are selling that double move with your hips. So I'm coming in now. So we had number 10, right? Number 10 was obviously Aiyuk. Number 9 was Metcalf. Number 8 was Malik Neighbors. Now coming in at number 7 on my top 10 wide receiver list is Terry McLaurin. I think he is one of the most consistent wide receivers in the NFL. The stuff that he's been able to do without a consistent quarterback play is absolutely insane. And he's going to be running a deep post versus an inside shade off man coverage look. Now this is a tough route to do, right? Because if you got a DB who's inside shade off man, that means about like 8 to 10 yards away, right? And you have to run a deep post where your break is probably at like 10 to 12. So we can't necessarily just stem this guy to the inside, try to attack him. Remember, a DB who's lined up inside leverage is inside for a reason. He doesn't want us to run to the inside. He doesn't want us to run a post, a dig, a curl, nothing. He wants everything to go to the outside where he has help, aka the sideline. So what we got to do is we got to attack his outside hip and outside shoulder. The goal is to make him think that we were just trying to run past him, get him to open up, and then bam, we cut underneath him. And that's exactly what McLaurin does here. But leading into it, it's just like that example of Aiyuk. Everything has to be the same. Everything is a fade until it's not a fade. So that means your stride length from the start of the route to the end of the route. That means your speed from the start of the route to the end of the route, and your pad level position, which means just like a slight lean forward. It has to look the exact same. That's the only way a DB is going to believe it. We want to get rid of any indicator. An indicator is where you're running full speed and then you start to slow down and then cut. An indicator is where you're running with good speed and then you take shorter strides because you're trying to come to balance for the cut. Or you're about to cut and you raise up with your chest to slow yourself down. Those three things are what DBs look for. And if we can avoid giving him those indicators, that's how we could get space. So that's why McLaurin comes in at number 7 on my list. I think he does this again, time and time again, every single route that he runs, and it's been very, very consistent over time. Now, coming in at number 6, we got Drake London. So Drake London is going to be running a 10-yard out route in this example versus a DB who's an outside shade off man coverage. So guys, think about it. When we have a DB who's lined up outside shade off man, his goal is to not let me go to the inside. Kind of like the last example. Remember, he's inside shade. We got to run a post. So it'd really just be the opposite. We'd want to attack his inside hip and his inside shoulder rather than on the post. We'd be attacking outside shoulder and outside hip. Now, here's the thing, guys. With that Terry McLaurin example, that DB was threatened by a deep route. But since Drake London here is in the red zone, this DB is not necessarily threatened by a deep route, but he is threatened by an inside breaking route because it's still man coverage, right? So what London does is he does like kind of like that 1-2 that we saw DK Metcalf use, except when it's at the top of the route, we have a different name for it. We call it a rocker step. You step in the direction that you were going first, so you were trying to go to the outside, so you step with your outside foot first, and then you press off of the outside foot to sell back to the inside. Make him think we were running some type of post. But remember, we attack his inside hip and inside shoulder because if we just try to run around him, that DB will keep that leverage and your out route will be way too close to the sideline and that DB will be right on your hip. QB will never throw that. We have to attack his inside hip and inside shoulder so we give the QB room, but we also can get separation. So great example here from Drake London. That's why he comes in at number 6 on my top 10 wide receiver list. Now, fellas, coming in at number 5, we're going to have Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp, this is another great example of that same deep out route that we were looking at from Drake London, but now we're in the middle of the field. We're on the 40-yard line. So watch what he does. It's very similar to what Terry McLaurin would do versus inside shade off man, and he has to run a post. It's the same thing, you guys. Let's attack his inside hip and inside shoulder. Let's run with the same pad level frequency, same speed, and same stride frequency. And if I could do that all the way to the break point, that DB has to commit because he is threatened by the deep ball, especially when he is in zone. He's taught don't get beat deep and don't get beat to the outside. So if we can make him think we are running deep and we could leave that quarterback space to the outside by attacking the inside hip and shoulder, that's a quarterback-friendly route. And that's what all top wide receivers have in common, you guys. They can run quarterback-friendly routes. So Cooper Kupp coming in at number 5 on my top 10 wide receiver list. Now, coming in at number 4 is going to be Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell, we could all learn from just the way he's able to change direction at the top of the break. Not saying that everybody can run routes like Tank Dell because not a lot of people can. I just think we all could get better from trying to replicate it the best we possibly can at the top of the break, right? His change of direction is, I think, second to none. I think the only guys that might be close to him would be like somebody like Jerry Jeudy, and Jerry Judy's not on this list, but the way he changes direction is very similar. But like, again, guys, you got to understand how difficult it is to go all the way into this break with the type of speed that Tank Dell has and how quickly he's able to drop on a dime. So remember, like we talked about it, the hips got to shoot into the feet, right? The hips need to shoot into the feet, and how low do we need to get? We need to get to a 90-degree angle, hips shoot to my feet as quickly as I can, and we're trying to bring that chin down to my knee. If I could hit those 3, if I could check off those 3 boxes, and you do that violently, you are going to be able to decelerate on a dime. And when we could decelerate on a dime, you guys, that's how we get open, and that's how we get separation. Great example there from Tank Dell, and then coming back to the ball, obviously. I know it's a practice example, but guys, again, we all can learn from that. Now, coming in at number 3, it is going to be Calvin Ridley. So I think Calvin Ridley is one of the twitchiest wide receivers there is in the NFL. Everything he does is insanely smooth, and his attention to detail is what I want to talk about on this route. So anytime I take an outside release and I have to run an outside breaking route, like an out route, like a comeback, like a fade route, we obviously got to give the quarterback room to lead me on the out route, right? So he does something called a dive release, which is where you take 3 hard steps at a DB's like inside hip and shoulder off the ball. The goal is to make him think we are running a drag, and then we put the brakes on and get back to the outside. Now, the mistake a lot of receivers make right here at this point is that they will go wide and then push up vertical, and what that allows this DB to do is to cut off our angle. And then a lot of guys will break right here, and then what they will do is they will kind of like how do I put it? They'll go really wide and then they just don't give their quarterback any space. What we have to do, guys, is we have to get vertical and get back on our path of the route, and we have to get hip to hip with the DB, aka getting skinny. So after he does this dive release, watch what he does. He runs right past him. He's getting straight up vertical because he got separation with the release, but at the top of the break, we still got to give my quarterback room, and I don't want this DB to be able to recover. So great example here from Calvin Ridley getting skinny. He's number 3 on my top 10 wide receiver list because, again, his attention to detail and the way he's able to cut, the way he's able to move is very, very tough to stop. Now, coming in at number 2 is going to be CeeDee Lamb. I think CeeDee Lamb gets a lot of credit for just being one of those receivers who can go up and get it, has great, like hands, obviously can run great routes, but I think off the line, again, a lot like DK Metcalf, doesn't really get the credit he deserves for the releases that he's able to use. So this is a very, very high level release that he does. So this is so if you're talking about like a split release, right? A split release is something you could use when a DB is right in front of your face. So a split release is where you come to balance. Your front foot goes out and then your back foot goes up. And then both feet hit the ground at the exact same time, right? So when both feet hit the ground at the exact same time, you kind of freeze this DB. You're trying to get a reaction out of him, but you're also trying to read him, right? If that DB jumps to the outside, okay, you push off your outside foot and take an inside release. DB jumps to the inside, push off your inside foot and take an outside release, right? So what CeeDee Lamb does is that he has a DB who's maybe about like 2 to 3 yards off, and he closes the space and then throws a split release, right? So it's just a way to freeze this DB, and this is a very, very high-level release that not a lot of wide receivers do, but this is, and again, you see what it does to the DB, makes him stumble, makes him trip, so we close the space, bam, split. Both feet hit the ground at the same exact time, freezes this DB, and then he leaves this DB. And that's a very, very tough release to do, and I think he doesn't get enough credit for the release package that he ultimately has. So that's why CeeDee Lamb is number 2 on my top 10 wide receiver list. Now, next up, number 1 is Justin Jefferson. I think this dude is one of the most, and the thing I like about Jefferson, reason why I use him in a lot of examples, especially when you're coaching up young receivers so they could see, because everybody loves Justin Jefferson, but the stuff that he does is not complex. It's not like he's doing these like crazy fancy moves out there. It's not like he's doing, super fancy cuts or moves that take forever. It's very efficient. And the thing about the receiver position is if we could have efficiency with the simple things and just be super efficient with simple, complex moves that keep timing with my quarterback, that could get me separation. That's what makes receivers so great, you guys. So watch what he does here. He just does a simple jab release, gets skinny, one cut at the top of the route, and you see how much space he's able to get, you guys. This is as simple as it gets. It's not a hard cut. He literally threw 2 cuts, one cut and then one cut at the top of the break. He didn't do this super fancy slide, crazy move, then came up to the top and did like 3 cuts at the top and then broke. Guys, he just gave just a jab fake to the outside, step wide, outside his frame, hips, shoulders, sell the fake to attack this DB's outside leverage and get him to move outside. And then he takes the inside release, staying super tight, hip to hip, getting skinny. He's able to stack one cut, and you see the separation he's able to get. That is textbook right there, and that's how all wide receivers should move versus this situation. Keep it simple, but let's be as efficient as possible. So, guys, that's my top 10 list right there. Hope this was able to give you some value. This video is done by request, so if you guys have any requests on future videos, stuff you'd like me to make, we always appreciate the feedback. Don't hesitate to post that in the comment section below. I'll talk to you guys next time.